Hello, so today I'm going to be doing a talk that I did a little while ago at church, so I'm going to be using my notes. I just don't want to skip over any details, so if I do look down and read, please excuse me, that is why. So this is just a condensed version. I will be making future videos that go a little bit more in depth on the topic and different aspects of what I'm going to be talking about. And any quotes and books that I'm referencing, I'll leave in the description box below. So my talk for the day is called Toxic Overload, a Personal Testimony. Disease, or the precursor to disease, manifests itself in many ways. For me, it was manifested in the form of allergies, quite severe allergies, I must say, severe IBS, chronic pain, and acne. Today's testimony, I'm going to be focusing on one of these aspects of my health issues, and that is going to be my skin. Growing up, I had almost perfect skin. I never had any of those issues that most teens have where they have breakouts and acne. I was lucky to bypass that throughout my school years, and I didn't have to suffer with any of those things. I didn't have to wear makeup. I just enjoyed having flawless skin. Fast forward a few years, because I had ignored the signs of toxicity in my body that I had before, my body tried to tell me in another way. I began to develop mild adult acne. So what was my solution? I went to the doctor, of course, and the doctor obviously recommended antibiotics like he did for everything else. So I took a bunch of antibiotics and it worked. You know, while I was taking them, it cleared my skin and kept my skin quite clear. But I ignored the fact that they were destroying my already fragile gut with every pill that I popped. While I was taking these antibiotics, you know, I continued, the problem seemed to be at bay, and so I decided to continue with my toxic lifestyle, and I continued masking my symptoms and, you know, filling my body with more toxins in the form of alcohol, beauty products, coffee, makeup, various types of food, you know, cakes, pastries and meats, sugar, chocolate, dairy, soda, eggs, fluoride, pills, you know, all kinds of pills. Like if I had a cough, I would take a pill. If I had a sniff, I had to take a pill, you know, because that is what I was taught you do. You go to the doctor when something's wrong and they give you medication to fix it. So every time a new issue would arise, I would just take another pill. And I would drown out all the warning signs my body was giving me with just more medication, and yet I couldn't understand why my body was betraying me in the form of acne. I knew that I couldn't be on antibiotics forever, but I didn't know what else to do. So I went back to the doctor, and what was his solution? The contraceptive pill. I was on this hormone destroyer for almost 6 years, and then I started hearing all the adverse effects and how the pill can wreak havoc on your body. So I decided to ditch the pill. What was my result after ditching the pill? Full-blown adult acne. I don't have any photos of this, unfortunately. I did start taking photos, you know, in the worst state, but I was so embarrassed I just deleted them forever because I didn't have any hope that my skin would get better. So I'll be putting up some photos of my skin while I was on the healing journey. So it wasn't as bad, but just gives you an indication of sort of where I was. I was just too embarrassed to keep those photos. I didn't want to admit that was my skin. My confidence was shattered, and I thought I was a healthy person, and now I'm dealing with adult acne, you know, and I thought I had a healthy lifestyle and this was my reward. I felt like a leper, especially since my occupation involved telling other people how to deal with their skin issues and how to look after themselves. I felt betrayed by my body, and I definitely felt betrayed by God. I used makeup to mask the evidence of a very disturbed and toxic internal environment, and I wouldn't dare leave my house without it. It got so bad that I would even apply makeup before my husband got home so that he wouldn't see my skin. I was so embarrassed. I cried a lot, and I fought with God a lot. I begged him to heal me, and it just wasn't working. Many have expected that God would keep them from sickness merely because they have asked him to do so, but God did not regard their prayers because their faith was not made perfect by works. God will not work a miracle to keep those from sickness who have no care for themselves, but are continually violating the laws of health and make no efforts to prevent disease. When we do all we can on our part to have health, then we may expect that the blessed results will follow, and we can ask God in faith to bless our efforts for the preservation of health. He will then answer our prayer if his name can be glorified thereby. That's from Counsels on Diet and Food. I realized that I had a work to do, so I began to research and quickly found that my body was in a toxic state. I had almost all the symptoms of a toxic overload, and it started manifesting in other ways. My IBS got so bad that I was constantly at the doctor's. I was getting scans, they were checking for PCOS. I had to have all kinds of tests done just to try and find out what the problem was. My IBS even landed me in hospital with severe pain. I really thought that I was busy dying. So I was rushed to emergency just to find out that it was just gut-related issues. I also eventually suffered with 2 miscarriages as a result of my, probably toxic internal state. But I'll go into all of these in future videos. But these are just some of the warning signs that my body was giving me that I was well on my way to developing a more severe disease. And my skin's reaction was just a warning sign that I'd been ignoring. I decided to make some drastic lifestyle changes because I realized that if I wanted healing badly enough, I would have to do something about it. So people don't like the word drastic, and maybe the changes that I made were quite drastic, but I had to decide between 2 versions of drastic. Was I going to live on medication forever, or was I going to change my lifestyle? And I really did not want to be living on medication forever. So the only alternative was to have a lifestyle change. So all these changes took a lot of adjusting, but I realized that if I wanted to see the results, I had to persevere and follow my convictions. Some days were harder than others, and I often felt like giving up because for a very long time I saw absolutely no difference. And again, I would argue with God. I'm saying, I'm doing what you want me to do, but I'm not seeing any difference. I'm going to put the list up, so you can just you can pause this video now and just read the list and see all the lifestyle changes that I made. I will, again, in future videos go into more depth, but at least here you can see the sort of changes that I have made. Galatians 6 verse 19 says, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." 2 Thessalonians 3 verse 13 says, "And as for you, brothers and sisters, never tire of doing what is good." Through all the tough times, I was reminded to persevere. I was rewarded for my endurance, the clearest skin I'd had in years. And I stand before you in this video right now with, I'm not going to say it's perfect, but compared to what it was, I mean, I'll take this any day. So my journey has come a long way after, this talk was written. So I will be doing an updated video, which will include other aspects of acne and, hormones and that sort of stuff, because I was blessed enough to fall pregnant and have twins, which I am still breastfeeding at the age of 13 months. So that's a whole nother aspect of skin that I'll have to deal with. Once this journey ends, that I'll be able to give that aspect or that side of things as well, a perspective from before pregnancy and after pregnancy and breastfeeding. And also I've been doing a few experiments with my diet as well that I would like to update everyone on. But for now, the list that I had previously given you or shown on the screen is what worked for me at the time. So I would definitely advocate those changes. I was lucky enough to forego makeup, and I still don't wear makeup. On the rare occasion I might cover up a spot or something, but I used to wear so much makeup, and I can't remember when last I did. In fact, I actually experimented a little while ago, and I think I put some foundation, I put some mascara, and I think it was maybe, I might have filled my eyebrows or something, I'm not sure. And when my husband got home, he looked at me and he was like, "Are you wearing makeup?" So I said yes. And then he said, "Oh, okay." So now I wondered like what he thought of it. So I left it on and I walked around the house, and later he looked at me again and he said, "Would you mind taking that off? I really don't like it." So that to me, it was so encouraging, because for the longest time I thought that I needed to wear makeup to look beautiful, and often when I was going through these acne episodes, I would just cover myself with makeup to make myself feel beautiful, and I realized that that wasn't necessary. And even more so, the beauty isn't what's seen on the outside, it's what comes from the inside. But that's also no excuse for not healing a toxic state. We cannot be too often reminded that health does not depend on chance. It is a result of obedience to law. That's from the Ministry of Healing. I'm going to remind you about what my skin looked like. Well, this is partly in the middle of my journey, but this is what it looked like when I started taking photos. And along with my reward of clear skin was an even greater reward. My relationship with God was better than ever, and I realized that I'd only been a Christian by definition for the past few years. Let none who profess godliness regard with indifference the health of the body, and flatter themselves that intemperance is no sin, and will not affect their spirituality. A close sympathy exists between physical and the moral nature. That's from Counsels on Diet and Food. So here I am today, a testimony of God's healing power. And maybe it's not some disease like diabetes or cancer, but it's definitely a precursor to one of those bad diseases, or more severe diseases. And it's definitely not a light disease, because anyone suffering with acne will know how much it affects you. It affects everything you do. It affects your life in so many ways, and your relationships. Your confidence is shattered. You just don't want to work. You don't want people to see you. Basically, you just want to hide away from the world. It takes everything that you are and it strips you of it. I realized that my self-indulgence was a disgrace to God, and that my spiritual issues were directly related to my intemperance. I was repeating the mistakes of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. As our first parents lost Eden through the indulgence of appetite, our only hope of regaining Eden is through the firm denial of appetite and passion. When they break away from all health-destroying indulgences, they will have a clearer perception of what constitutes true godliness. A wonderful change will be seen in the religious experience. For it is impossible for men and women with all their sinful, health-destroying, brain-innovating habits to discern sacred truth, through which they are to be sanctified, refined, elevated, and made fit for the society of heavenly angels in the kingdom of glory. Those quotes are all from Counsels on Diet. With all the disease and suffering around us, I am truly grateful that God opened up my eyes to my mistakes and encouraged me to heal through God's way. He has given me the victory over appetite, which I really never thought was possible. And I've mentioned this in previous talks. My size can be quite deceptive. I had terrible appetite control, and I would pile my plate so full of food. I mean, it would compare with my husband, who's very hardworking and weighs almost twice as much as I do. My plate portion would be the same as his, and I'm this tiny little person who's eating all this food, and I wouldn't deny myself any luxuries. I thought that I deserved it. I was hardworking, or I would gym well for the day, and I thought I could treat myself. And one of my favorite sayings that I always remind myself about is that you're not a dog, you don't deserve treats. I have healthy treats now, and I love them, but I don't think that my body deserves a bad treat. It's not really a treat, it's actually just causing disease. In fact, if I ever do fall off the bus, I feel quite guilty about it. I don't, boast to myself about how well I was working or how hard I was working, and that I deserve to now have this body destroying thing. One thing I had to keep in mind throughout the journey, though, was the fact that I had taken years to poison my body, and I couldn't expect overnight results. So my patience was tried and tested, And I can say that these trials and tribulations are what chipped away the dirt that revealed the gold. I'm still a work in progress, and you know, it will take a while to get to where you want to be, but my faith has been restored, and I'm grateful for the hard times that I've had. I realized that if I couldn't resist these temptations, I would be too weak to endure any end-time trials that would come my way. James 1 verse 12 says, "Blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to them that love him." Now that my condition is almost fully healed, for the time being, you know, I'll still need to speak about the breastfeeding and the pregnancy journey and the miscarriages. It's my duty to continue living the lifestyle that I've been convicted of, you know, the lifestyle of temperance. John 5 verse 14 says, "To many of the afflicted ones who received healing, Christ said, 'Sin no more, lest a worse thing come upon thee.' Thus he taught that disease is a result of violating God's law, both natural and spiritual." That's from the Desire of Ages. In the past, you know, when preachers would stand up in front and ask if we were going to heaven, I would stand in awe at those who confidently explained that they were going to heaven. You know, they would stick up their hand and say, "I'm going to heaven," or "Amen." I didn't understand how anyone could say something like that. How could you be confident in something like that? But I had a cherished sin in my heart, and which was preventing me from sharing in the joy of claiming the promise to be in heaven. Romans 10 verse 9 to 10. "If you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord, and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For it is with your heart that you believe and are justified, and it is with your mouth that you profess your faith and are saved." I just needed to accept the free gift that was offered, but my intemperance was blinding me to the truth, and I didn't want inconvenience to rule my plate. I was exalted through self-indulgence, and Christ was belittled. It was only through this learning experience that I began to understand true surrender. There's a purpose to everything that God does, and while I did not enjoy suffering through this phase of my life, I would endure it again if it meant that my walk with God would get closer and closer. Little victories lead to the ultimate victory, and it's only by relying on God that we can claim victories in this life. I would like to challenge you today to have a deep look at anything that may be keeping you from proudly stating that you will be in heaven one day, and I urge you to surrender it to God and allow him to lead and guide you as you walk through this process of refining. May you be blessed in your endeavors to gain the victories, and may God be glorified. I hope that this was helpful, and if you have any specific questions or comments, don't feel scared to reach out. I'm on Instagram as well. You're welcome to direct message me there, or you can just comment below. That's fine. But for those of you who know me and are scared of reaching out, this is an open invitation. You've got my number, and I'm happy to help where I can. I hope you have a great day. Bye.